Hey guys, Saga here, and today's video is going to be about moving with the payload and capturing points and the relative time it takes for you to capture the point by yourself versus having a friend versus having 3 people. For those of you who don't know, 3 is the maximum on pushing a payload. It will not move faster if you have more than 3, and the maximum on capture points is also 3. So before we really get into it, let me just get some of the basic information out of the way that some people don't know. The payload heals you if you are close to the payload. It has a healing aura. It's not as strong as like Lucio's thing, but it's a heal. You're actually getting healed by being on the payload. So when people run away from the payload for minor injuries for health packs or whatever, they're actually both hurting their time and getting out of position for no real good reason. Also, another thing worth mentioning, and I didn't know this until I actually read his post, for payload rollback speed, where the speed itself is a constant and will only roll back at a certain rate, 30 ms per second, if one person is standing on it, that rollback will only start 10 seconds after it's contested. I thought it was instant. I didn't know this. Interesting to know. So basically you have decisions while you're pushing the payload. Obviously, having more people on the payload is better than having less, because they'll move faster, up to 3. However, sometimes getting off the payload to deal with somebody in a troublesome position or to make your future push smoother is a better idea than staying on the payload and staying in a bad position relative to your opponents. A lot of pro teams will push a high ground position first, completely leaving alone the payload, and then go back and get it once they've cleared the enemy team. Alright, so before we go any further, let me explain to you why this video is the way it is. I tried to make this video 3 times, and the first 2 times I failed because it was boring. It was very boring. And I think this is the problem that a lot of people see when they see a big text post that's got a lot of numbers. It's not easy to relate a number to what it is in the actual game. Like, it requires a lot of game sense and a lot of feeling. And as a result, seeing a number, because we're not computers, makes it difficult for us to equate what that means in-game time and in-game sense. So for this video, I'm going to ignore a lot of the numbers. Not what they mean. We're going to talk about what they mean and how it's applicable to your game directly. But we're going to not actually mention the numbers. I threw out all of the stills I made, and I think it's for the better, because if we're to look at the numbers, we're just focusing on the wrong thing. You're going to hear the numbers once, you're going to be like, oh, that's interesting, and then later you'll forget it. It won't affect your game in any way. Instead, I'm going to talk about what's actionable, what you can take away from these numbers, what you can take away from this data to make your game better. So Canasian's text post has got a lot of information written in the form like 2 people is about 13% faster than 1 person. 3 people is about 25% faster than 1 person. 3 people is about 14% faster than 2 people. And where that's an interesting thing to know, really what's more important is understanding the relationship. Knowing that having 3 people on the point is obviously better and more conducive to capping the point quicker than having 2, right? You want to have more people on the point if you can. But in game, it's never that simple. People often make the tactical decision to run forward, or make the not so tactical decision to run forward and meet the enemy aggressors in order to slow them getting to the point. And sometimes this strategy makes a whole lot of sense. You have a character who can stop a character from ever reaching the point. It doesn't really matter if it takes an extra second or 2 to cap then. However, sometimes you can stop people without leaving the point. Things like bullets stop people.
Oh, bullets. I only witnessed. How did you know?
And sometimes just having more people on the point and allowing you to capture quicker is better than running out to meet them. And there's a decision to be made here. And once you stop giving into your base instincts of running and murdering everything, you can actually stop and decide intelligently, is it better to have 3 people on the point? Is it better to have 1 person go off the point and stall? What is the optimal strategy? And you can make a tactical decision. One of the more interesting parts of his research is that all the different maps have different capture speeds. So where on both payload and capture point maps, the maximum people on the point is 3, the different types of maps actually require different amounts of time in order to be capped. This is a really interesting design decision when you think about it. It's a way that you can balance King of the Hill versus, say, a hybrid capture map. I like information like this because it challenges our assumptions. I, for one, would have thought that it's static speed for everything, and I haven't really seen information to the contrary until right now. So how might you apply this newfound knowledge? Well, for one, on certain maps, having more people on the point makes the cap speed significantly faster than on other maps. So removing one person or keeping them on could be situationally dependent. Now, I know I'm not telling you an easy answer like do this in situation A, don't do this in situation B, but that's because the game is a lot more complicated than that. And ultimately, you'll have to defer to yourself in order to make the right kind of judgment. But this knowledge can help you make better decisions. Now, if you're anything other than a Grandmaster team, all I would remember is that having more people on the point is faster, and that there's a decision to be made there between whether or not I should run interference or if I should remain on the point. But if you are a Grandmaster team, you might want to take a closer look at his text post, because there is some information to help you make decisions. Like, oh, it captures a little bit faster on a hybrid map with 3 people versus the King of the Hill map. And maybe because we're on that specific map, I would make the decision to remain on the point versus going off. So there are conclusions to be drawn here. They are not necessarily easy to draw, but they're there. So if you want to really pour through this, I'll leave a link to it in the description. If not, what I would take away from this is 3 things. First, you have a decision to make between remaining on the payload or remaining on the capture point or running interference, right? And that decision should be made as a decision and shouldn't be made because you have bloodlust in your veins. 2, the payload doesn't start to roll back for at least 10 seconds. Not necessarily the most actionable information, but it's definitely good to know, especially in those moments where you just killed the last person and you're wondering why hasn't it started rolling back, and you start frantically looking around as opposed to watching the choke where they're coming from. And 3, the capture points have different capture speeds based on different types and possibly even because of different maps. So keep that in mind. And if you want to do more with that information, it's there for you to do it with. Use your best judgment, but make it a decision. Don't just have it be something that you do arbitrarily, or you run off the point sometimes and other times you remain on it. These are good things to know. Also, one of the best tips in this video is probably just, you don't have to go off the point to slow someone down, right? Bullets do a great job.
Bullets!
Oh, and a 4th takeaway, I think I mentioned this already like 2 or 3 times, but it's worth saying again, 3 people is the maximum. On the payload, most people know this already, but on capture points 2. So keep that in mind. Know that if I already have 3 and then 2 people can run off and run interference too, that might be worth doing, right? So it doesn't slow you down to do so, and your people get to run forward and have their fun. I mean strategically delay someone. Also a special thanks to Kinesian for offering this information. I really appreciate it. I hope I did it justice, and if you guys want to go give him some thumbs up for his information, you can find the Reddit link down there. Also, just a few announcements. The next video coming out is going to be a Roadhog absolute beginner guide, where I talk about all of the things that you should probably know if you're starting to play Roadhog. I already put out an advanced guide, and I kind of noticed after I put out the advanced guide that I never did like a beginner guide. So I'm going to do the beginner guide, and then afterward I'm going to do a part 2 to the advanced guide, and it's going to be pretty good. And I think after this I'm going to just stop talking about Roadhog for a while, because that's everything I have to say. If you'd like to see my Roadhog guide, you can check that out here. And if you'd like to see the first episode of Appreciating Gaming, which involves Xenoblade, it was a pretty good episode, I think. You can see that over here. Alright guys, I'll see you next time.